So I'll go ahead and introduce my panelists. Sona Pelavanian serves as New York Interconnect's Vice President of Addressable Campaign Management Operations. She's responsible for strategic development regarding data, market, and research analytics, inventory sources and partnerships, technical process improvements and operations, support for data linear, addressable, interactive, and digital sales. She's a marketing operation executive with an accomplished track record of contributing to the development operations of revenue growth award-winning advertising technologies, including addressable advertising. She's a personal friend of mine who I work with on a lot of campaigns. Very, very smart marketer. Please welcome Sona Pelavanian to the stage. So another, that's a quick. Yeah, and I personally want to apologize again to look at my picture on the screen for the last half hour. That was not good. Load. So, also joining us today, very excited to talk to Jonathan Salazar, who is the Global Senior Digital Manager for Brown-Forman and Jack Daniels. He's promised free whiskey to everybody for the last half hour.
We need it.
Making all the coffee today. So he is born in Mexico and moved to the U.S. at the age of 7. Jonathan grew up in southern Indiana and attended Indiana University and studied dual degrees in marketing and international business for the last 6 years. He has worked with digital marketing at Brown-Forman, starting in digital compliance, and most recently was asked to lead the global digital strategy for Jack Daniels. Bienvenido.
Gracias. Hola.
So let's talk a little bit about digital trends. And you've seen enough of that. I should have clicked the clicker before. So issues facing digital marketers today. Go ahead and start off, kind of eliminate some of the middle stuff. But let's talk a little bit about data privacy. And data privacy in particular, this is how I grew to meet Sona. I used to work for Acxiom, which as many of you know is a big data company that's really data compliant. I worked with her on a lot of campaigns. But Sona, I'm going to start with you. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the marketplace with data compliance. I know that off of a recent survey I just saw, privacy is still such a major concern. GDPR is something that's staring all of us in the face as marketers and advertisers today. But what are your thoughts on data privacy?
Sure. So the Interconnect is a consortium of Altice, Charter, and Comcast, and we represent all of their inventory in New York DMA. So for addressable advertising, we started with Altice, and just a little background, we started with TV and we've become digital, but on the TV side, we get second-by-second census level data. So every single click on the remote, they're capturing that. So there's so much data out there and you can do so much with it. So it's always a challenge to balance between what the advertiser wants you to do and what you can do. So there's a whole continuum of here's what and then you also have to message to your subscribers, of course. So you have to keep everything super compliant, and of course the cable operators are very stringent about that. So what we're seeing is, we've done a lot with addressable advertising, and we've worked a lot with Kenneth on that, targeting advertisers on a household level for TV and digital now. And what we're seeing is as we start to represent other operators, how do each operator, how do they work differently? Because everyone's got their own different levels, but you have to still present one unified offering to the advertiser. So you have to balance all of that. You have the advertisers who are pushing you to do more. You have your lawyers, you have all of the lawyers that you're working with telling you, all right, you can do that, but the other one says, no, you can't do that. So you have to get what the common balance is there. So it's really between what's technically possible, what's compliant, and what's going to keep the business moving forward. So we're really in the thick of it now, and as platforms come together, it complicates it even more. But they're very serious conversations. So all the lawyers, they used to be the people in the background, but they're really in the business, whether they like it or not today.
Yeah, and I agree. I will tell you my background. I come from consulting, from the agency world, and also from working for brands and advertisers. And having worked at Acxiom in particular, when I was working on, this is not, hopefully my small ears won't be a problem. She's already given the "what's your frequency" joke, Kenneth. That was staying down for about 30 minutes. But one of the things that I saw with all types of advertisers, especially in TV, where you're dealing with Fortune 200, you tend to feel like it's a little more of a sophisticated crowd or marketing crowd or advertising crowd because the campaigns are so much more expensive. But I can tell you that having gone from a data company to a consumer brand, and I'm now with an agency, it is a remarkable shift in the mindset of brands and how they treat data. Especially, there were some horror stories that we used to talk about a lot during the political days where people would try to hand you data on a disk or a thumb drive, which is scary that consumer data can be shared. I obviously won't mention any names of those, but one thing I would tell everybody to do, and I know people tend to believe that they are data compliant wherever the brand is, I can tell you 50 horror stories of where they're not. And as companies get more sophisticated with bringing in that data, it also means that we have to spend that much more time being more compliant with your data, especially, outside of the regulations, whatever happens with GDPR, know that you've got to treat your customers' data with the utmost respect. There is so much dark data out there that comes in that customers don't even use that you collect. And it's all being appended back to those files. So I want to switch subjects then and talk a little bit about Omni Channel and what you're seeing in the marketplace. I'll start with Jonathan this time. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing from an Omni Channel perspective on your campaigns.
Yeah, so hi everybody again. Thank you for coming and thank you for putting up with some of the audio problems that we had this morning. Actually, a little breakfast whiskey wouldn't sound very bad right now. Responsibly, of course. Take it easy over there. But yeah, omni-channel marketing is becoming a even more and more relevant topic and more important topic these days because looking at the journey that your consumers or your users or your followers are taking and making sure that they're experiencing your brand equally through these different touch points has to be an important conversation that you're having, and making sure that the data points and the data that you're collecting in the different touch points is integrated and you're using it in a way that makes that journey even more smooth and exceptional for your consumers is an important aspect of what you need to be delivering, right? So it's not just about the products or services you offer anymore, but it's also about the experience that your consumers have while getting those products or services. So omni-channel approach for brands, specific for ours, and making sure that whether we're communicating via email or social or display or search, but the data that we're collecting, the information that we're collecting, the experience that we're providing in those different channels has that commonality, that common ground is very important for the consumers. So,
how about for you? What do you see, son?
Yeah, again, so Jonathan's on the digital side. I started in the TV side, and we're becoming digital. But as you can see, we're all sitting on the stage together now. So it's all about the consumer. It's all about the conversation. I think that's what everybody knows, and that's what everyone's talking about. But certainly we're seeing it, and as the lines blur between what TV can do versus digital can do versus all of the platforms, who you go to buy that media is also changing. So meanwhile, I used to go to an agency and there was one buyer for TV, one buyer for digital, one buyer for print, one buyer for outdoor. All of those have an underlying data component now. So what we're seeing is you go with an offering and it's not, you don't have to go to 4 different people anymore. And I think that what we're seeing is the agencies and the clients, they don't want to see 4 different plans. It's all about the audience, and they want to go to one place, they want to buy one campaign, they want to run it everywhere they can, they want to see where it is, how things are working across the funnel, they want to see the attribution across. So, it's a huge shift, and it's really changed so much in the last year from what we're seeing. So I think soon you're just going to go you're going to be able to execute your whole campaign, from a single buyer instead of going across. So there's a lot of cross-training because the TV people have to learn digital quickly. The digital people have to learn out of home quickly. And it's exciting because, your consumer, we know what we're all doing. You see the billboards outside, you're on your phone, you're going to go in and watch your TV, but it is a conversation, and they're not separate. When your consumers are happy, when they're not happy, it. Everything is so immediate, and you can't wait for people to move across the funnel. You have to really hit them all together.
Yeah, I was going to add one thing. I do this on my podcast. I talk a lot about Omni Channel because it's important to me, and having worked for a big data brand which identified the customer was basically the link, and you look at the advertising that went outside from all points out of there. What I will always say, and I do this a lot, I talk about this a lot on my podcast, the confused buyer says no. And so, your customers don't live in silos. So when you think of it that way, people should not get mixed messaging. Yeah, even if you walk outside here and you see a ton of imagery, I wish they would add some advertising on Times Square. But when you see that, they should see the same thing. And I do this as a test often when I come through. I'll come see what's being shown up on the display. Then I'll go look in The Gap or Old Navy or whatever the brand, showing the same thing in email messages, banner ads or whatever. And they don't. Some of that's being done with search and then retargeting, where you try to deliver a more seamless message. But you've got to keep it simple. Customers should be viewing omni-channel message, should be viewing a single type, narrower message, and keep it simple, stupid is what we all say a lot. But they only know one version of you and your brand and your channel. They don't care about different silos of teams you have, or agencies, or the 20 agencies you work with, or the 10 different internal teams working on a campaign. You're one brand. You are, Jack Daniel's whiskey is Jack Daniel's whiskey to two people. It's, a great whiskey. It doesn't need to be 50 different things that are disparate because it's a large corporation with 50 different teams working on it. You should be working as one message. And what it does, and the reason I say that too, is we've worked together, Sonia and I have, and you will see an amazing amount of incremental lift of when you streamline those messages. It's more expensive to do things like addressable, but why? Because it works, and it does reach a narrower audience. But why? Because you're hitting your target audience with a more streamlined message, generally, that you'll generally see, a 30% lift, especially in the front end for the first campaign. There are a lot of smart brands that are doing that, and it makes it easier for their customers to understand it.
And can I just add one more thing? So that mindset also needs to start internally. So
Absolutely.
if you're a digital marketer and you're not involved in conversations when creative is being developed, then you need to speak up and say, hey, I really think I need to be involved in these conversations, because the world of traditional marketing only is gone, right? So when you mentioned out of home, a lot of out of home now happens also digitally. So me as a digital marketer, it is imperative that I'm involved in conversations about creative that are going to have a significance or an impact in digital, whether it is a TVC, a TV ad that's being produced. We're going to use that in social eventually, or in online video. So making that mind shift internally and inserting yourself in conversations early on at the planning, digital is no longer only executional, right? Digital now needs to be strategically. And what I've done in my company and our brand is try to change that mind shift, that thinking about digital strategically from the beginning is better in the long run, better for the campaigns. And going back to Omni Channel, it helps that conversation, because a lot of times your traditional marketers or your brand marketers don't really think to that point quite yet early on. So it's important to have that voice, and important to have those questions at the beginning for the campaign. Yeah.
Good point. So let's switch then to personalization. Jonathan, talk about how you see personalization in your advertising and marketing strategy today.
Yeah, so personalization, this is a interesting topic, because to be honest, I think we're probably a little bit behind on what we could do for personalization. It really comes down to data management and having a sound data strategy, and being able to connect that data with your actual consumers and follow them through the consumer journey. So being blatantly transparent here, I don't think that we do as great of a job as we should, but I think that is an area of opportunity for us, because the more we can personalize the information that, or the communication that we're delivering to our consumers in a way that's relevant, then the more meaningful distinction we're going to have, right? So if you think about, the consideration mindset of consumers when they're thinking about a product or brands, it's very few, right? It's 5 or less brands that they usually think about. So the more you can personalize your communication, the more you can understand your consumers and tie the different data points together. We keep talking about data, and I don't know if we're going to talk about it specifically, but having a data strategy is probably one of the best things that you can invest in and you can put your time in right now. It's a very complex world. Trust me, I'm building a global data strategy for Jack Daniel's right now. There's so much data that you can get about your consumers that is available. The important question is, what is the data that matters, right? What is that information that is going to tell us what we need to know about our consumer, and how do we tie it together to other areas of the consumer journey and make sure we're looking at them together. So personalization is key, right? I think from a consumer perspective, we're almost expecting that nowadays, right? If I see something that I know is that I'm interested in, that a brand has made the effort to say, hey, I know you like Under Armour is a good example. I shop Under Armour a lot. But they do a really great job of personalizing the information, the messages that they deliver to me based on my habits, based on my interests, based on my likes, based on things that I didn't even know they knew about me. But it makes it that much more relevant. And as marketers, as digital marketers, we need to be striving towards it. We need to be delivering communication and information in a way that we know is relevant for the consumer. So, having that data and that data strategy to help us do that is key.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that is, I agree with everything you said. One thing I will say as well is not every campaign has to be personalized as well. And I think one of the key things that people rush to do it, and we know as a practice, it's better to do it, but also test it and see where your lift rates, because there are different things you can do that are different lead gen tactics, for example, that don't necessarily have to say, hello, Jonathan. It could be putting Jonathan in the subject line gets a better open lift than whether or not you say, hello, Jonathan. And it's a bad example, but there's so many different things you should test with personalization. But we obviously know it's a best practice to do. So voice search and audio, I'll keep it brief. This one's really on me. This is one of the things that our opener spoke about. This is one of the things that really gets me excited on quite a few different levels. One, podcasting obviously gives you a remarkable way to tell your story and your content marketing efforts in such a different way. I think most of us know this. There's a wonderful podcast called The Shark's Perspective that I'll name drop, where you can hear more about that. But I actually was just on a radio show and webisode that SAP sponsors with another one of our speakers, Pan. And one of the things that I get excited about with how people leverage voice as well is they are using call intelligence software. If you're getting any kind of calls coming in, whether it's with Invoca or MarTech or Dialogue Tech or CallRail or any of those, Invoca is more of my preference, but Invoca takes, if somebody calls into a call center and they have a complex problem, they use a technology behind the scenes that transcribes that, and then you can take that and optimize your ads through DoubleClick or Facebook, and they do it now with Bing. And that type of voice optimization where you can in real time trigger your ads more quickly is really exciting, and I can talk more about that. Another one, though, really I think is a focus. I'll talk a little bit more about this in the masterclass session tomorrow with a strategy, is where you can really differentiate yourself as a brand and leverage that for the Alexas and Siris and Google Assistants of the world. Really I worked for a brand prior to AI Media called TrueGreen. Now, I think we've had more lawns in my neighborhood than they do in Manhattan alone, but when you think of TrueGreen, which is the largest lawn care brand by far. Another one's Starbucks. I mean, people don't go Google where you're going to get coffee near me. You're going to Google Starbucks. Where that can change your strategy for differentiating yourself as a brand is so important and key to placing yourself right in the market to be something other than majority. So most of your large verticals, generally you have one company, like an Amazon in e-commerce, that owns 3/4 of the space. I don't want to be fighting for 25% of the market. I don't want to be fighting in Starbucks if I'm a local coffee shop. It's hard to beat the 800-pound gorilla, but if I'm a coffee shop that also has something completely different that differentiates myself, it can change your strategy, especially for voice. And the reason is, you don't get 10 different search returns on Alexa when you say, find a coffee shop near me. You get one. You get the one that ranks number one generally with most of those. So you want to differentiate yourself as a brand, especially through your voice and voice SEO efforts to differentiate yourself. So programmatic advertising, Sona. Talk about what you're seeing in programmatic advertising today.
So digital has done a really great job with programmatic advertising. It's very
You're welcome.
It's very easy to go to buy, to sell, to track. There's a plethora of companies out there. I think on the TV side, we're a little bit behind on that because there's so many other factors that go into how we display our ads. But with OTT rising, that's behaving much more digital, and it's really, kind of shaking up the whole industry because that's what our marketers want. When you go to the agency, they're like, well, I can, we're talking about our Omni Channel strategy, we can buy our digital this way, why can't we buy our TV this way? And why can't we buy it all together? So we've been out there really talking to all the partners to try to figure out, how do we do this? How do we execute both an Omni Channel and programmatic strategy to make this a reality and to make it very easy to buy and sell. I think TV has a little bit of work to do on just how their traffic systems were set up, and if you ever wanted to get your mind blown about how your TV gets to you, as far as head-ends and all of this stuff, you would understand why it's so difficult. But so they're really trying to bridge that gap, and there's a lot of big companies who are trying to take their cues from digital in that sense, but we are certainly a little bit behind on that.
Let's go to TV and video. Go back to you.
Yeah. So to continue that conversation, so TV is really starting to look a lot more like digital, and digital is starting to look a lot more like TV. I mean, we all agree that video is the most powerful medium. So where that video is consumed is becoming less relevant. The marketers want to find their audience. They want it to be impactful. So you use data as the underlying connective tissue with all of this because you want to find your audience, and you want it to be video. So where it's displayed is becoming less relevant. Again, with OTT rising up, I think that's spurring the blurring of those lines, because when you go to try to sell that offering, do you go to the digital person or do you go to the TV person? And each person that you go to has a different opinion on that. So our salespeople are really running around trying to help them figure this out and trying to say, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be separate. If you're a TV person, you're buying an audience, you're buying your eyeball, you're buying a very impactful spot. And on the digital side, everyone wants video, they want this valuable inventory. The great thing about OTT is you can see it on the big screen, it's still your shared experience, it's still hugely impactful, but you can buy it and you can target it like digital, and you can still get the data back on it. So to me, it's a very exciting time because we're working with our partners, Altice, Charter, and Comcast, on how to unify their strategy, how can we buy it from them and represent it back to our clients, how can our clients get the most impactful ROI from it, how can we tie all of that back to attribution to really measure it. So I think OTT has really been the bridge between the TV and digital worlds, and it's all heading to take the best practices of both. So it's a lot of fun to try to figure this out.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Sure. So OTT means over the top. So when you think about cable, it's a plug in your wall, and that's how your TV is getting to you. It's anything they call it, kind of over the top of that. So it's your Roku or your
Streaming services.
Your streaming services. Those are the OTTs. So your OTT offerings, you do need a relationship with your cable company because you need the pipe in there, but you don't necessarily need their cable service. So it's becoming a very interesting way of marketers to buy, and for us as sellers to sell this inventory, because you're not just selling the spots on your cable inventory. You have to sell really everything. So you have to learn all of this quickly and bring it all together.
So my background in TV, I have worked both on air and behind the scenes for a big chunk of my career. I had a TV show in the local market, and then I actually switched to get the behind the scenes, and I don't know if I ever told you that, but then I started working on the data side, delivering a lot of campaigns. I delivered close to 400 TV campaigns, national campaigns, but I've used video in commercials and produced a lot of those, produced a lot of direct response type things over the years. And one of the divides, I was doing that while I was also considered the digital marketing director for a school group. And then I switched to the data side and so on and so forth. But one of the things I find often for digital marketers that they struggle with the most is understanding and grasping TV. And a lot of that, some of it's generational because of the changes that we're seeing, not necessarily because millennials are younger. I don't mean it that way. I mean more of where we're going with what's cord cutter versus, still plugged in through a coax like old people like me, who do it that way. That change, though, is, especially when you talk about from an Omni Channel perspective, where you'll see a lift, where we saw a lift, at Axiom, is when you're identifying your target audience and you're giving them straight the same message, whether it was through a digital channel or a TV channel, and having that overlap make sense, is where you're going to have a major opportunity to see massive lift. And where that will come into play, that we're starting to see, obviously, is with more connected TV. But I think the game changer, and I speak about this a lot because it's a passion of mine, is where digital marketers need to advance their knowledge in TV that much more because of 5G. 5G will be a game changer. There will be a lot more people. Why would I ever need to attach a cord? That will also give me a remarkable amount of capabilities to augment my digital advertising to be more connected with my TV advertising. Now, there's still some pushback with how that will all work, but know that opportunity is becoming to where you're going to have that much more of an opportunity in a year or so to deliver a more streamlined channel. And I'll talk about that with some real world examples in my class tomorrow. But I would say that there's a mutual friend of ours who was at the TV meeting we went to last month, who started a company. She had worked in TV and digital as well, and she started a company with a friend, and they call it something digital. I'll say Acti Digital. And she thought that at first that most of her own work was going to be about 80-85% digital consulting, and in TV about 15%. She said it's been the flip because she's seen the same thing I see when I provide consulting services, where digital marketers are trying to now learn that much more about TV so that they can advance more sophisticated advertising strategies. And those strategies, I say it not because we all need to learn more, we do, but what happens is you start seeing a much larger lift. And so many of us have become conditioned to think of TV as cord cutting versus not, but really what I always important people to think of, it's still again with silos. Your customer, if they see a Jack Daniel's TV commercial or a digital ad, they don't care what silos it was bought in or put in to get to them. They only know that Jack Daniel's brand. So you've got to think of it from an advertising strategy like that. So I'm going to lump, just to sake of time, AI and machine learning with MarTech together. So we should start on talk about what you're seeing in MarTech right now.
Well, MarTech is just a culmination of some of the things that we've been talking about, right? So it's all these tools and these platforms that we have available through technology that can help us with our marketing efforts. So a specific example that I can mention, the recent project that I worked on is augmented reality. So Jack Daniel's, we just, like 2 weeks ago, just launched a new augmented reality app. If you haven't downloaded it, check it out. But it's just an example of taking technology that exists and helping you reach or obtain your marketing objectives. So for us, augmented reality is a area that we hadn't explored before, and we found an opportunity to do so in a way that allows us to tell our brand stories in a relevant way. So it's essentially you use your camera and you scan a bottle of Jack Daniel's, and that bottle comes to life. So it tells you about the distillery, it tells you about our brand history. So I think the key with MarTech is to make sure that you're using marketing technology to help you reach your objectives, right? There's a lot of technology available to us that we could easily get our hands on, but the important piece is this helping me get to obtain my marketing goals? Another example, so we do a lot of text analysis, social listening kind of work. But one area that we recently started kind of working with is image and logo recognition to help us understand the conversations that are happening about our brand outside of like just keyword searching, right? So there's a lot of conversation that happens from people posting images of our brand and they never mention us. So before that, we never had any insight into this conversation because they weren't mentioning our brand, so it wasn't coming in any of our analysis that we were doing. But now, through the use of MarTech tools, we're able to now analyze deeper conversation about our brands just based on picking up and recognizing our logo, even though we may not be mentioned in those conversations. So, marketing technology is just making sure that you understand that the tools that you're going to be investing in are helping you reach your specific objectives. So having those objectives in hand at front will help you determine what tools you need to seek out to help you achieve those objectives or get a better understanding on how to achieve those objectives.
Great point. Yeah, I'll add to that, sort of spark something, and I think we think of dashboards a lot with all the technology we get and pull together, and then it becomes a dashboard of dashboards that really don't do anything. The thing that I will always say with all marketing technology, it should help you focus more on your customer. I agree with everything you just said, but really if your advertising is not helping your business, if you're on the agency side, obviously it should help optimize your advertising somehow or get a better view. But really if you're on the brand side, whether you have a CDP or any other flavor of CRM or data warehouse or data lake or whatever it is, make sure that technology and how it plugs in with your legacy systems helps you keep a better focus on your customer and helping them solve the specific problems they have. That's something I spew about way too much, but technology is changing so quickly. When you think of everybody now's got a bot. Bots are great, but they just need to help me get to where I need to go if I'm on a website. I don't need to interact with something that's this crazy decision tree. I worked on I think it was like the 5th or 6th IBM Watson campaign. Fantastic, but it was a massive decision tree that I didn't even understand the value of until I really went through it as a unique customer and saw the value of how that kind of technology, if built out correctly, can help me solve a complex problem as a consumer. And I think brands unfortunately lose too much of that, just implementing a lot of systems way too often.
Kenneth, so, in my world, you really can't speak about MarTech without also speaking about ad tech.
Ad tech, yeah.
And even if you just walk the halls here, just all these great sponsors, thank you all. If you look at what their offerings are, it's not just MarTech or AdTech, it's really connecting all of it.
Exactly.
And with data underlying all of, so much of marketing today, the solutions in AdTech that can bring in your MarTech and keep the lines open and the conversations back and forth, I think those are the ones that are going to win in the end. So we can call it MarTech.
Yeah. So you talked about augmented virtual reality. The only thing I'm going to add, do you want anything else on augmented virtual reality other than what you just said?
Just the only thing I'll add is, so working on a global brand, technology has challenges when you think about it globally, right? So the experience that you have in one market, in the US, may not necessarily be the experience that you can have in another market. So if you are working in a global brand, just have those considerations that consumers are going to have to experience in different ways, whether it be for legal restrictions or just cultural norms, but just be mindful of that and make sure that even though the experience may be different, the essence of the experience is the same, right? Because as we've been talking, the brand experience needs to be consistent, that no matter how it's being consumed. So
I had to get Jonathan to explain to me earlier. I actually thought augmented reality was when you have too much Jack Daniels, but it's not. But I will say about augmented reality and virtual reality, I think we're a little behind sometimes. I think we're a little bit behind AR and VR. I think we know what the capabilities are. What I get excited about is when are we going to finally make a lot of this come to fruition. I've been excited about AR and VR for years. I've followed a lot of what it can do, and I'm ready to move forward with it. If anything, I think we're a little bit behind on AR and VR right now.
yeah, so just one more thing I'll add, because I just actually saw this a couple of weeks ago, but there's an emerging technology, so we're talking about trends, there's an emerging technology, it's augmented reality audio,
Yeah.
which is also called spatial audio, which is basically augmenting the auditorial experience of consumers or users. So this is something we're looking into, because we have a home place, we have the Jack Daniel's distillery, and then Brown-Forman, our parent company, we have several other distilleries, but we're thinking, how can we enhance the experience of the visitors or the people that are coming in a way that we're still delivering the key message, but they're getting an enhanced experience. So spatial audio or augmented reality audio is something that we're starting to dive into. Nothing really concrete yet, but just as we're talking about trends, that's something that keep an eye on.
So attribution. So one of the most important subjects in the world, where Sona and I have been on many attribution reports. It's when I would get nasty phone calls and emails from her about attribution, but it is one of the most important things facing us as marketers today because of all the data, and I'm not lying about that she was almost always right. But talk about what you're seeing in attribution today.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of my favorite topics because there's so much out there, and it's changed so quickly, and it's just something that every day we're hearing about new ways to do this. So again, in TV we have second-by-second data that we're collecting, and so that's known data, so we know exactly who clicked, we know exactly who did that. It's all de-identified, don't worry. But we also have an IP digital offering with all of our partners, which enables you to get that same level of granularity, so you know exactly who, when you serve the ad, who saw it. So that really opens up huge possibilities for us. So when we started, it was really just TV, and that was when Kenneth and I worked together, and we were all, we didn't even have templates for what TV attribution looks like, right? Because it never really existed before, so we really got to do it from square one, which was a lot of fun. So again, it's that balance between what you can do and what is compliant. So everyone figured out a way to get all of this de-identified exposure data at the individual exposure level, and then a marketer can send their sales data, and then the smart people over at Acxiom would take all of those massive amounts of data, put it together, and you get an actual view of who actually saw your ad and who converted. So that was groundbreaking at the time. It was, we went through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to, get to a good product. It was something that was a huge differentiator. It really spurred addressable advertising because of the promise of not only delivering to the household level on TV, which you could never do before, but actually getting the attribution on the other side. So with the addition of IP digital, we were able to look at that same attribution analysis, but across platforms. So you could talk to Blue in the Face about, you should do an Omni Channel message. It's a integrated strategy, but until you actually had the numbers to show it, some of it was a little hard for people to bite on. So what we found was that we saw upwards of 60% lift on campaigns that you could show. They saw it on TV, they saw it on your digital execution, and then the people who saw it on both, that's where we saw the biggest lift. So for us, that's what we all had a hunch about, but the numbers actually showed it. So from then, marketers said, well, can we throw a brand study on top of this? So we said, all right, well, how do we do this, right? So we work with some of, the usual suspects in brand health studies, and we're able to show that they do a survey before the campaign starts, they do a survey after the campaign starts. So then we were able to show not only if you saw the ad, then you transacted at a higher rate, and actually your brand perception increased as well. So then we layered on foot traffic studies. So obviously in digital, that was a very common practice. For TV, it was brand new. So we layered that in as well. And then the latest trend that we're seeing is web pixel measurement. So if you saw the ad, did you go to the website? So for Jonathan, right, that's you want to get the whole view, because the job of TV or your digital ad is, there's not one single thing that's going to make somebody convert, right? So there's other things to consider that make a campaign a success. So what are those things? So did they not know about your brand and now they know about it? Well, to me, that's a win. Did they come to your store? That's a win. So if you're an auto dealer and you run a campaign, is everybody going to run out and buy a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 car? Probably not. But if you can get them in your showroom, I think that's huge. And we're able to show that their ads have caused people to come in and come in the showroom and ask about the car. And then the web pixel traffic, were they interested enough to just go on your website? And you can tag different pages to see where did they drop off? Did they complete a request for information? So there's enormous opportunity where you can see along the funnel that someone saw the ad. Okay, how many of those people went into the showroom? Did it end there, right? So you can see where you need to optimize both your business practices and your advertising to see, where did things drop off? So there's a lot that happens between your ad and a conversion, especially on a big ticket item. But if you can see, all right, did it change the brand? Did it get people in my store? Did it get people to my website? You can really get a sense of what they're doing and where things dropped off, where you can optimize if you need to bolster your salespeople in your showroom, or if you need to make your website more intuitive if they're not, if they're kind of dropping off on your website. So from your one single campaign, you're getting your TV, your digital, your location, so it's all really exciting. And again, it's the balance between what your advertisers are pushing you to do versus what's all compliant, but the data's all there. So, I can't wait to see what's next.
How about you, as a brand, how do you approach it?
Well, everything you just said is spot on. The only thing I would add is from a brand perspective, so there's several different attribution models there, right? You have last touch attribution, first touch attribution.
Last click. Last click is a dirty word.
Yeah, data-driven attribution, which is what we focus on. But the challenge that we have as an alcohol brand is that in the U.S. we can't sell directly to consumers, right? So we have what's called a 3-tier system where we sell. So we're a supplier of alcohol, we sell to distributor then sells to a retailer then sells to a consumer. So for us, sales attribution is not, we can't, because we don't sell directly to the consumer. So some of the things that you mentioned about, there's still an opportunity for us to gauge conversions on other things, right? So did people visit our website? Did people follow our page? And to that, as e-commerce becomes more and more prevalent, especially the alcohol industry, then we'll have some opportunities to begin to tie in ad dollars to online sales. But at this point, if you are experiencing challenges with attribution, just know that, as long as you are tracking towards something, so whether that's online conversions to the website or business to your store, then just have a model in place and be consistent with that model. And as industry changes or technology emerges, then you'll be able to adapt and make changes. So.
Yeah, I will tell you, sorry, what were you saying?
Just one thing to add, I think all of these points of attribution have also attracted digital-only brands to advertise on TV. So even a year or two ago, we never had digital-only brands advertise on TV because they said, nope, we're digital-only, everybody finds us, we have a way to reach everybody. But because we're able to show all of this and really give them a 360 view of what's going on across the whole funnel, we've been seeing a ton more of digital-only companies advertising on TV, which is interesting to us.
Yeah, I was just going to add, especially having done both sides and in between with digital and TV, one of the things, I also worked for a brand that did last click attribution, which was horrible for the amount of money we would spend on advertising. To see the way the journey has changed, as our opener brought up, people's journey has completely changed. They do so much research beforehand. Clicking on the last ad that you put out on Google makes Google look fantastic, but GA perspective does not tell the story all the way through. And the reason I joined the company I work for now is because they have a patented attribution technology, and it is similar in some ways to the way Acxiom would build their journey for customers. You've got to spend as much time as you can becoming a data-driven marketer in today's world. Everybody's being forced into doing this because they want to know where the money's being spent, where it's being optimized. And I can tell you firsthand, what I've seen is every minute that I invested in attribution paid itself off tenfold. And becoming a better data-driven marketer and understanding all the points that hit your customer, understanding that full journey can make dramatic improvements in customer experience and how you spend your dollars today. So any closing thoughts, anything additional that either of you wanted to bring up before we get out of here?
I mean, for me, being invited to speak at a digital conference when we're, mostly, when we started really as a TV company, to me is just really exciting. Just taking, trying to be nimble like digital has done so well, using the power of the big screen and all the really impactful lessons that we learned from TV, and just bringing in all of these other things. And somehow along the way, I became a data person, which just still makes me laugh. But I just think it's exciting. It's changing so quickly, and I think even 6 months we've had a different conversation sitting up here.
Well, it's also because of the campaigns that we worked on. We worked with so many smart brands that did TV and digital together that saw that 30% lift. And your companies, your automotive especially, they understand data extremely well. I brought up another brand that I worked on a lot of campaigns with. It rhymes with Target. But they were really smart on how they looked at their digital and TV. By a lot of these brands, they were not all large, Fortune 100 brands either. The smarter they were in data, it showed two things to me. One, they were better at optimizing their ad spend dramatically across all channels. And two, they were providing a better customer experience. And that's in particular why we worked on a lot of campaigns that would string TV and digital. Why I wanted her up here to speak as well, especially where it's going with 5G. Sorry, I cut in on your time.
No, it's okay. Just real quick, if you take one thing from today, and I think we've kind of all been saying this, but it's data-driven strategy, right? So actually, I've been calling it, and my team, data intelligence, because it goes beyond data, right? It's what do you do with that data? What data should we be looking at? So digital intelligence is key, and it'll open a lot of doors for you, a lot of opportunity. But make sure that you're tying into specific objectives. But yeah, if you don't have a data strategy, digital intelligence strategy, then get one now.
So I will also offer this, because everybody was very patient with having to go through this. I know Aaron I was worried about was going to get the defibrillator if we didn't get the microphones soon. But if you'll give me your business card, out of the spirit of having Jonathan here, too, I'm going to buy anybody, not everybody, I'm going to do my own little personal drawing for a really nice bottle of Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey. So give me your business card, I'll do a drawing. I may stuff my own card in there a few extra times because I love Jack Daniels, but do that. So closing thoughts as well. I host a podcast called The Shark's Perspective. Rand Fishkin's been on the show, Sona's been on the show, Jonathan will at some point. A lot of these names are some of the top influencers in the world. Ann Hamley, Martin Lindstrom, Guy Kawasaki, smart digital marketers. And I focus primarily what I talk about. Pam Didner, who's an outstanding speaker that'll be speaking tomorrow as well, has been on the show. I try to take as many different points of view from digital, TV, email, ORM. I do call it the generic equivalent of Ambien, so don't do it while driving. But I bring on some smart speakers that have taught me a lot, and I think can teach you a little bit as well. So, and the reason they have sharks in there is because this is what I like to dive with. And I'm a swimmer, a scuba diver, and it's a personal passion. It's why people call me Shark. So anyway, thank you very much for your patience. I hope you got something out of this, and appreciate Digimark